Hey guys, so we know we got the Bandai Namco Legacy Cabinet, we got the Atari Legacy Cabinet, we got the Capcom Legacy Cabinet, and we also got the Midway Legacy Cabinet that has been teased that we know is right around the corner that's going to get probably thrown out there officially pretty soon. So I thought it'd be pretty fun to go over what we would see possibly on a Konami Legacy Cabinet. And for what I'm going to do for this video is I'm going to focus on games that don't have any licensing issues that I can find. So these are going to be games that were all developed and published strictly by Konami. They don't have any outside licensing issues where these games were like that we want to see on cabinets, but it's like, well, they got to work with licensing from this person and this person, and it gets kind of complicated. These are all games that I think Konami could throw on a cabinet if we, if there was a partner with Arcade1Up, which obviously they have partnered with stuff before. These are all games that they could just throw in there pretty easily from what it seems like. So I'm going to focus on games, like I said, with no licensing issues. Also, I want all games that have the right joystick control format. So I want all games that are going to work on an 8-directional control joystick, and games that also have just a standard formatted screen. So all games that have a vertical format screen I'm leaving off here, and all 4-way directional control games I'm going to leave off here. So these are games, like I said, this will probably not be a list, a legacy cabinet list. This is just for fun, games that I like that I want to throw on here. After I go over my 12 games at the end, then I will also kind of break down which of those games are likely to be on a legacy cabinet, a Konami legacy cabinet, and which games are not likely to be on a Konami legacy cabinet. But like I said, this will be pretty fun, I think, to go through. Also, if you're not subscribed yet, make sure you subscribe and get into that giveaway. I got a Nintendo Lite, Nintendo Switch Lite that I'm giving away. I'll probably be doing that giveaway. I'll probably be announcing that sometime next weekend, so make sure you get into that giveaway and get subscribed so you can get a chance to win that. But all that said, let's go ahead and get started. We will start things off with Sunset Riders. And Sunset Riders was released in 1991. It's a run and gun style game with a western theme. You play as bounty hunters and your goal is to defeat a gang. You hunt them down over 8 stages, each of which ending with a boss. The gameplay, music, and graphics for this game are really solid, and it's one of my favorite arcade games of all time. There was a 2-player and a 4-player version of this game in the arcades. Sunset Riders was also ported to the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo, which are both pretty solid ports. The game is also available on the Nintendo eShop and PlayStation Store as part of the Arcade Archives series. Next up we have Metamorphic Force, which was released in 1993. This is a 2-player side-scrolling beat-em-up that has you selecting between 4 different characters. The cool feature that this game has is that you can morph into an anthropomorphic beast, which is also known as Beast Mode. You'll do this by collecting golden statues, and once you're in Beast Mode, you are stronger and faster until the Beast Mode meter runs down. Metamorphic Force is a really nice looking game, where all the character, enemy, and boss sprites are large and detailed. I don't think that there was ever a port of this game anywhere, and therefore it's mostly known for being an arcade hidden gem more than anything else. Most who have played it would like seeing it on this cabinet though.
Who are you to wake me?
Moving on to Gradius. Now the original Gradius was released to arcades in 1985. While in Japan the game was known as Gradius, the arcade releases outside of Japan were known as Nemesis. The game is Konami's most recognized shooter and one of the best early side-scrolling shooters in arcades. The game received many ports, most notably to the Nintendo Entertainment System. It's part of the Arcade Archives series, as well as can be found on the Nintendo eShop or PlayStation Store. Gradius also received many sequels. I could really care less which version they included, Gradius 1, 2, 3, or 4, as long as I just pick one. I wouldn't put it past Arcade1Up to make this cabinet Gradius themed and use up to 4 of the 12 slots with Gradius games. I just want one entry and let me get some diversity here. Speaking of genre diversity, let's throw Running Gun 2 up on here to give some sports love to the cabinet. You could really pick the original Run and Gun if you wanted to, but the sequel is much better with the addition of alley-oops and spin moves. but Run and Gun 2 was released in arcades in 1996. The game uses the likeness of NBA players and teams. However, being that it doesn't use the actual names of teams or players, then there shouldn't be any issue as far as licensing goes. The game is a lot of fun, and some people actually prefer it over to NBA Jam. It's 5-on-5 basketball arcade fun, and there was a port on the Super Nintendo that went by the title of NBA Give and Go. And that game actually does use NBA teams and players, and it's worth checking out because it's a lot of fun as well. For the fifth game on this list, I'm going with Mystic Warriors. This is a side-scrolling ninja-themed shoot-'em-up. Just think of it as a ninja version of Sunset Riders. In fact, it was developed by the same team at Konami that created Sunset Riders, so there are a lot of similarities as far as gameplay goes. Mystic Warriors was released to arcades in 1993, and there was a 2-player and a 4-player cabinet available. In the game, you choose from 5 characters, and after choosing your character, then one of your remaining comrades is captured by the Skull Forces, and you then battle through stages until you find your friend. This game is an absolute blast, and it's a shame that Konami has never ported this game to another system, so it would be awesome to see it here.
No, we'll never get away with this. Let's go. Come on.
So Konami wasn't really known for its fighting games like Capcom was, but they did have a few good ones, and Monster Maulers is one that was a lot of fun to play. The game was released to arcades in 1993. In the game you select from 1 to 3 characters, and you got a brawler, a martial artist, and a wrestler. And in Monster Maulers you fight against, well you guessed it, monsters. And it's really pretty fun and creative fighting game. And what makes this unique is that when you are in 2-player mode, then you can play co-op against a monster as opposed to fighting each other, which most fighting games do. But regardless, this game's a lot of fun, and I'd like to see it on this list. Moving on to another beat-em-up, I got Violent Storm as the 7th game on the list. Violent Storm was released to arcades in 1993, and dang, that was a busy year for Konami in the arcades. But the game is a post-World War III game and has 3 protagonists to choose from. Apparently they were patrolling the street to protect the helpless. A gang kidnapped some girl, rode off with her on a motorcycle, and they are off to rescue her. Original story, yes I know. But the gameplay is really solid. The sprites are large, colorful, and detailed, and this is a really solid beat-em-up. There was a 2-player and a 3-player version of this cabinet, so on the 3-player version you and your friends can play as all the protagonists at once. This is another game that I don't believe ever received a port of any kind. Now to a more common game, I have Russian Attack, or the game known as Green Beret in Europe and Japan. But Russian Attack was released to arcades in 1985. This is a run-and-gun action platformer, so you play as a US Special Ops soldier making his way through 4 stages to save POWs. Your soldier is equipped with a knife to fight off the enemies with, but you can find a few new weapons after killing enemies such as a flamethrower, RPG, or grenades, all of which you have limited supply of ammo for. The game is a classic and a lot of fun. It was ported to many different platforms, most notably to the Nintendo Entertainment System. And it's another game that is part of the Arcade Archives and can be found on the Nintendo eShop or PlayStation Store. Well, being that this is my cabinet, you know I need to have more shooters on here. So I'm going with Thunder Cross. You could go with the original or Thunder Cross 2 here, but I'm a simple man, so we'll use the original. However, the original Thunder Cross was released to arcades in 1988, and graphically it's definitely a step up from Gradius, as it uses 2D layered scrolling for the backgrounds, which this technique was actually new at the time and looked really good. Other than that, it's a side-scrolling spaceship shooter that spans across 7 stages. You control the Thunder Fighter, and you'll have multiple weapon options. So nothing really crazy here, but I'd just like to see the variety as opposed to multiple Gradius entries. This is another game that's part of the Arcade Archive series and can be found on the Nintendo eShop or PlayStation Store. To mix things up, yet again, I got the main event as the 10th game on this list. The main event was released to arcades in 1988, and while it's not the best wrestling arcade game by any means, it is pretty fun and adds some good variety to the cabinet. The game is a tag team formatted wrestling game that supports up to 4 players. There were 8 total wrestlers to choose from in the game, and they all were knockoffs of WWF wrestlers of the time. So licensing is not an issue here, and this game should be an easy addition to the cabinet. Not the best Konami arcade game, but it's good for a few minutes of fun if you have friends over. Now for one last beat 'em up with Vendetta, or also known as Crime Fighters 2 in Japan. Vendetta was actually released in 1991, and this is a case where I wouldn't mind them including the original on this cabinet as well, because Vendetta and Crime Fighters, while both beat 'em ups, look nothing alike. Mainly because outside of Japan it was marketed as being a standalone game. But the story is similar to that of most beat 'em ups. The game supports up to 4 players as you play through a game as a gang known as the Cobras, who are out to rescue their 5th member, who is a female named Kate. The gameplay is solid, the graphics are pretty good, and it's worth a spot on this list. Alright, for the final spot on this list, I'm in it with Life Force, or also known as Salamander. But Life Force was released into arcades in 1996, and it is a spin-off of the Gradius series. It plays as both a horizontal and vertical scrolling shoot 'em up, and it kind of switches back and forth between the two. This is another shooter that I actually prefer over Gradius, but it is not as well recognized. The game has received several ports, as Life Force was ported to the NES, and the arcade version of Salamander was ported to the PC Engine, Sega Saturn, and original PlayStation. It's also part of the Arcade Archives and can be played on the Nintendo Switch and PlayStation Store. So that's my list of 12. And if we break down the games by genre, we got 3 run and guns, we got 3 beat 'em ups, 3 shoot 'em ups, 2 sports games, and then 1 fighting game. The games that were not on here due to probably licensing issues would have been Aliens. I really would like to see the Aliens arcade game on there. It's a lot of fun, but obviously there's a lot of complications as far as licensing with that. Bucky O'Hare is one that is licensed by Hasbro. Maybe they can straighten that out. I don't know. G.I. Joe is another one that's licensed by Hasbro. I don't know if I'd prefer that over some of the games I have on this list, but it's just one I thought I'd throw out there as far as licensing. Wild West Cowboys of Momesa is one I'd really like to see on here, but there is some licensing issues with that. I think they could possibly straighten that licensing out, but you also don't really see that game ported anywhere, so it's possible we won't see it. The Simpsons obviously is one that we've been wanting to see for well over a year now, but there's a lot of complications as far as licensing with that. And maybe Asterisk. Asterisk is another one that kind of maybe I'd like to see on here, but there's some licensing issues there as well. Games that I did not have on here because they're a vertical format screen. You got Contra, you got Super C or Super Contra, Jackal, Blades of Steel, and Frogger. So it's possible they would probably bundle these games on here, but that, I kind of don't like having those mix of screen formats. So I would really, I'm kind of mixed on how I feel about that. The games from this list that I think there's a good chance that we would see on a legacy cabinet, you got Gradius, you got Life Force, you got Thunder Cross, you got Sunset Riders, Russian Attack, and so those 5 from my 12, I think more than likely we will see some of those on the legacy cabinet, Konami legacy cabinet, when we end up seeing one, which I'm pretty sure we'll see one eventually. The one on here, or one more that will probably be on here, I could see Haunted Castle being on here as well. That's another one that they've thrown around in their arcade archives collection. That's more or less it's a port of Castlevania to the arcade. But I really don't care for that game too much, to be honest. So I would rather see the games that I have on my list as opposed to Haunted Castle. But I have a feeling that that would end up landing on there as well. So we probably would get those 6 games on there, and then I could see them just throwing some licensed game on there, whether it's, whether it is Simpsons game or multiple Turtles games or some of the X-Men games. I see them throwing some games like that on there, because as far as my cabinet, the game that they would probably, if you just had those 12 games, they would probably theme it after Sunset Riders or something like that, or Gradius is what I'm guessing. And I think a Sunset Riders theme cabinet would be pretty cool. I just don't see them doing that. I think a lot of people would like to have that Western styled themed cabinet in their game room. That would be really cool. Obviously, this would be a 4-player cabinet because a lot of these games on here are 4 players as well. But yeah, I think it would more or less would be a Sunset Riders 4-player themed cabinet, which is why they probably wouldn't do that. They would probably use the Ninja Turtle licensing, or they'd use something like the X-Men licensing. But like I said, they've just used those on cabinets recently. I don't necessarily really want to see themed cabinets for those again, but we will see. But other than that, let me know what games you would like to see on a Konami Legacy cabinet. Especially, like I said, I mean, if you go through that, if you think of games that there are really no licensing issues of, there's some more that I left off. But like those are the ones I think that I would like to see on there with a good mix of genres and just versatility. My big fear is that obviously that they would use like 4 slots for something like Gradius and just kind of not have that variety there or something like that. But thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Later.